The sun cast a golden hue over the neighborhood, where trimmed lawns met cracked sidewalks and the faint hum of sprinklers echoed in the background. Near the corner, a makeshift table sat just beneath a maple tree, its legs slightly uneven on the grass. A large piece of poster board, wobbly and hand-colored with crayons, read, "Puppies for sale," in bright, uneven letters. A cardboard box next to it wiggled gently, two tiny noses peeking out from under a blanket. Emma, just 7 years old, stood behind the table, her shoes scuffed and her ponytail slightly lopsided. Her small fingers clutched a worn leash tied loosely around the neck of a sleepy brown and white puppy. Her eyes scanned the passers-by, hopeful, then disappointed, until she saw a tall man in a sharp navy blue suit approach, absorbed in his phone call. He was just walking past when Emma gathered her courage and stepped forward. "Please buy our puppy," she whispered. The man stopped mid-step. He glanced down, startled. And then his expression shifted. That voice. That face. He blinked, confusion quickly turning into recognition. Standing not 10 feet behind the girl, arms folded with exhaustion and pride etched into every line of her face, was Karen, his former executive assistant. The same Karen he'd laid off just last month in a cost-cutting move he hadn't stopped regretting since. Her clothes were modest, her eyes tired, but she stood tall beside her daughter. Mr. Wallace opened his mouth to speak but no words came. The weight of his choices pressed heavily on his shoulders. The bright eyes of the child, the quiet strength of the mother, and the innocent hope wrapped in a puppy's wagging tail, all collided in a moment he hadn't expected to find on a quiet suburban street. The office was cold, too clean, too quiet. A sterile kind of silence hung in the air, broken only by the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Mr. Wallace sat behind a wide glass desk, his hands folded tensely, his jaw tight. Across from him, Karen sat straight-backed, her purse clutched tightly in her lap. The HR director stood just off to the side, eyes lowered, arms crossed with practiced detachment. "This wasn't an easy decision," Wallace said, his voice formal but hollow. "The restructuring affected multiple departments. Karen gave a small, polite nod, interrupting him softly. "I understand." Her fingers trembled as she reached for the pink slip being slid across the desk. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. But Wallace noticed the way her shoulders hunched, as though bracing against a blow. She stood slowly. "Thank you, for the opportunity," she said, forcing the words out, her voice thin and tight. Then she turned and walked out, her heels clicking softly against the tile floor, the pink slip held like it might tear if she gripped it any harder. That night, long after everyone had gone home, Wallace sat alone in his office. His tie loosened, his blazer draped over the back of the chair. The computer screen glowed in the dim room, casting a pale light on his tired face. He reopened Karen's employee file. There it was, a small, smiling photo attached to her emergency contact form. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, beaming with pride, arms wrapped around Karen's neck. He stared at it for a long time. He hovered the cursor over the close button, then paused. A long sigh escaped his lips. Finally, he closed the folder, but the image of Karen's face, and that quiet heartbreak in her eyes, never left him. The shadows stretched longer across the sidewalk now, and the hum of passing cars was gentler, quieter. The puppy stand looked the same, simple, earnest, and fragile in its innocence, but everything felt heavier now. Mr. Wallace remained still for a moment, watching Emma as she smiled at the puppy in her lap. Karen stood a short distance away, arms crossed, pretending to be focused on adjusting the box of supplies beside the table. Her face was turned slightly away, but Wallace knew she had seen him. He knelt slowly beside Emma, the fabric of his suit tightening at the knees. She looked up at him with open curiosity, not a trace of judgment in her young eyes. "Why are you selling puppies?" he asked, his voice gentler than before. Emma looked down at the sleepy puppy and stroked its ears with care. "Mom says we need money until she gets a job again," she said matter-of-factly. We only have 2 left. They eat a lot. Wallace felt something pinch in his chest. He reached out and gently patted the small puppy's head. It gave a lazy yawn and nestled closer to Emma's side. Karen finally turned toward them, clearly uneasy. Her cheeks were tinged with red, but her posture remained firm. We're okay, she said quietly, as if trying to convince herself as much as him. Emma just wanted to help. She thought selling the puppies was her way of contributing. Wallace looked up at her. There was no anger in her eyes. Just exhaustion, pride, and something heartbreakingly resilient. I see, he said softly. His hand lingered on the puppy's fur, but his mind was far away. The weight of the last month pressed in again, heavier now with the sight of the girl, the dogs, and the mother standing just out of reach. Karen sat across from Wallace at a small wooden table near the back, her hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup she hadn't touched. The warmth of the shop contrasted with the tension between them, awkward, uncertain, but not hostile. The murmur of other customers created a gentle hum that filled the silence. Wallace fidgeted with the sleeve of his blazer. He wasn't used to feeling nervous, but today was different. Thanks for agreeing to talk, he said, his voice lower now, more human than corporate. I wanted to say. I'm sorry. I know that probably doesn't fix much, but I've been thinking about that day ever since it happened. Karen gave a small nod but said nothing. Her expression was unreadable. I should have done more, Wallace continued. Your work was solid, more than solid. You kept that office running. The truth is, I didn't fight hard enough for the people who mattered. For you. Karen blinked, surprised by his candor. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thin folder. There's a position opening up, senior coordinator. Better pay, more flexibility. You'd be working remotely half the time, so you can stay with Emma more. I want you to have it. She stared at the folder like it might bite. I don't want charity, she said, her voice firm, proud. It's not, he replied without hesitation. It's an overdue correction. For what I didn't do when I should have. Karen slowly leaned back in her chair, the folder untouched between them. Her fingers tightened around the cup, but her eyes softened, just a little. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel dismissed or invisible. She felt seen. The sun dipped low behind the trees, casting long, warm shadows over the patchy grass. Laughter echoed through the yard as Emma raced in wide circles, the brown and white puppy bounding after her, ears flopping with every joyful leap. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes bright. For the first time in weeks, she looked like a child with nothing to worry about. Karen stood on the back porch, arms crossed loosely, a faint smile playing on her lips. The lines of worry on her face had begun to fade. Her phone, still tucked in her back pocket, buzzed occasionally, emails from her new role, messages from a team that finally respected her voice. The job wasn't just better pay and flexibility, it was validation. A second chance. Wallace stepped through the gate and into the yard, dressed more casually than before. No suit. No tie. Just a man coming by to visit. Emma spotted him immediately and ran to him with the puppy on her heels. She tugged his hand gently, just like she had the first day. Thank you for buying our puppy, she said, her voice full of quiet sincerity. Wallace chuckled and knelt down, rubbing the puppy's head. Its tail wagged furiously. He looked up at Emma, then over at Karen, who met his gaze with a calm that no longer carried tension. No, he said, smiling, his voice softer now. Thank you, for giving me a second chance. Karen nodded, her eyes reflecting something like peace. As Emma darted away again, chasing the puppy in the golden light, Wallace stood quietly beside Karen. There were no big speeches, no dramatic endings, just the comfort of redemption and the quiet hope that sometimes, things could be made right again.